I've had a shadow person follow me throughout my life. I've had multiple paranormal experiences, but this one creeps me out the most. I've had a shadow person follow me throughout my life. The only time I remember seeing it myself was when I was in my old bedroom upstairs, meaning not in the basement. I was around 7 to 8 years old, and in the middle of the night, I woke up and looked at my window, which had blinds and was illuminated by the moon. In front of the window, however, was a black silhouette of a little girl with what looked like a short curly hair, almost old-timey looking. I was terrified and thought I was seeing things, so I just rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. The door was open when I woke up. I asked my parents if they came into my room, and they said that they didn't. Although I haven't seen it again, my friends have. A couple months or so after I had seen it, I had a sleepover with my friend at the time, still in the same room. We had slept on the floor because my bed was too small for the both of us. In the middle of the night, my friend woke up and saw that there was a dark shadow man standing over me and just staring down at me sleeping. She told me this when we woke up in the morning, and I noticed my door had been opened. I just figured it was one of my parents checking on us, so I asked both of my parents if they came into the room, and they both said no. Years later, I moved into my sister's room downstairs in the basement. After she moved out, I was 16 or 17 and had forgotten about the shadow person at this point. My best friend spent the night, and she told me in the morning that she saw a shadow figure standing in the corner of the room in the middle of the night. At first, I didn't believe her until I remembered the two incidents that happened almost a decade prior. I didn't tell either of them about the shadow person stories until they told that they saw it. I am 19 now and haven't had any incidents that I know of since. My worst paranormal experience. A bit about me. I'm both a skeptic and a believer. I have seen a spirit follow me across the planet and even talked to it at one point. It is my protector. I know how it sounds, but it's comforting thinking there is something looking out for me. Anyway, I also know that people are imaginative. Stories are exaggerated and people bend the truth. I'm not a native English speaker, and here our class field trips included trips to a haunted house where ghosts live and rocks or mountains where elves live. We are taught to believe in the paranormal. When two of my friends, we'll call them friend 1 and friend 2, got their first apartment together, it became our go-to hangout place. I spent a lot of my free time there. I remember the day they first took me and another friend to the apartment. The moment I stepped into it, I felt this overwhelming sense of fear and anger. I immediately knew that there was a spirit in there, not with the best of intentions. One day, as I was helping friend 2 move, we were carrying his bed, and as soon as we entered the apartment, the door immediately shut super hard and we both jumped. I knew it couldn't have been the wind, since I stood an inch from the door and would have felt some of it. Sometime later, they had fully settled in and I was in the kitchen alone when I heard the loudest bang coming from behind me. And when I turned around, I saw the smoke detector fall to the ground and landed on the other side of the room from where it had been in the ceiling. And it wasn't glued to the ceiling or anything, it was screwed on. It also didn't bounce since I would have heard it. Every time I was alone in a room in that apartment, I could feel someone behind me. And also whenever I'd enter an empty room that didn't have lights on, I could see in the corner of my eye a woman in her 30s or 40s in a fully white wedding dress. When friend 1 was leaving the apartment, he took his stepfather, who has his third eye open, and he saw exactly what I'd seen without me ever telling them what I saw. At some point, we were all chilling in the living room watching TV when we all heard footsteps run from the kitchen to friend 1's bedroom and then back to the kitchen again. Mind you, there are 4 doors between those places, and each and every one of them opened and slammed shut in unison along with the footsteps. At that point, I'd had enough and asked them what the F that was. They said calmly, "It's the ghost." So they apparently knew it was there. The ghost was scary at first, but it was so active and was walking around closing doors that it became like a roommate. We even started to tell it off when it was making too much noise late at night, like a door would slam shut, no windows, doors, or anything open at 2 a.m., and we'd go, "Stop, that was too loud, and it's 2 a.m., go to sleep." I had the unfortunate perception of not living there, but spending a lot of time there, and saw these two best friends begin to hate each other. They were always annoyed and angry at each other. Friend 1 worked an 8 to 4 job, however, he could barely sleep and almost got fired. The other one didn't sleep at all and stopped showing up to work, leading to him actually getting fired. It got to the point of whenever I came to their apartment, friend 1 was always trying to sleep in the living room because he didn't want to sleep in his own bedroom. The other one was doing anything he could to stay out of reality. One day I get a phone call from friend 1 saying the other one had just packed up and left. He had literally taken everything except his bed and was going to get that tomorrow. I then talked to him and he said that he was going insane in that place and that if he didn't leave, he'd either kill himself or his friend. I went back there a couple of times so that my friend wouldn't be alone in that apartment while he looked for another place to stay. I could see him turn pale, angry, and depressed. I told him to sleep in his car, and that seemed to work. You could explain all the physical things that happened in that apartment, such as the doors and footsteps, but what has me convinced that there is something in that apartment is that I saw two happy go-getters transform into sleepless husks of what they used to be within 4 months. Luckily, they are both alive, and I talk to them still, and I can tell that they are doing much better now. They haven't spoken to each other since one of them left, but we all met again a few weeks ago, and I could see a glimmer of what their friendship used to be come back. Note, you could chalk all this up to drug use, but all the incidents happened while I was completely sober, and in fact, the only time I didn't notice something was while being high. The most skeptical person you'll find is a third friend who admitted to not wanting to go there because of a bad feeling he had. Ripped right out of a book. This event has happened twice in my lifetime and it feels too weird not to share. The first time this happened was back when I was 7. We went on a cross-country trip and visited Yellowstone and decided on staying in the Old Faithful Inn. The afternoon, my parents let me run to the gift shop while they sat on the second-floor balcony area to watch the geyser go off. On my way, I noticed a young boy no older than me at the time asking strangers if they had seen his mom. I was a bit concerned for him, so I decided to follow him a little bit down the stairs since I had to go there anyways. Though after I took my eyes off him for a second, I looked back to where he was and he was nowhere to be seen. I thought it was odd, but I didn't bring it up with my parents considering that he may have just ran out of view. Before we left the hotel to head to another, my dad picked up a book of ghost stories based around the hotel, unaware of what I had experienced. That night, he was going through the stories and read one about a young boy who roams the second floor looking for his mother. I found the story really similar to what I had just experienced and told my parents who also thought it was weird. For years, I disregarded the event until something similar happened when I was 16. At this point, I had decided to dabble in the paranormal activity after some other experiences I had. My parents decided to take me to a cemetery in Plymouth, MA to test out some equipment I had gotten, EMF and spirit box. After walking through the graveyard for a bit, I noticed a particular grave had a high EMF reading. I waited around for a bit when I noticed the wind pick up to a point where I felt like I was in a heavy storm. It was completely out of the blue considering the day was clear and wind-free. At that point, I got a strong urge to leave as if I wasn't wanted. I chose to accept the warning and head out. That was until I felt a strong punch sensation to my gut. After that, I obviously got the hell out of there. One thing I didn't mention was that before we went to said graveyard, we picked up a book of, you guessed it, Ghost Stories in Plymouth. I didn't read any of it before entering the graveyard out of curiosity. I decided to read it when I got home, only to discover once again I had experienced something someone else had in the past. This time it was of a tour guide that had felt the same sensations and experienced the same gust of wind within the same graveyard. With this happening twice, I am really starting to consider if I have a knack for this kind of thing. I do believe that I have some connection with the paranormal and have tons of other stories of things I've experienced during my amateur investigations. My paranormal experiences so far. I have had a few different experiences in my life that I think are probably paranormal events. I considered doing a different post for each one, but I don't want to dwell too much, so I've decided to bundle them up as one post. The first experience is from when I was a child, probably between 3 and 5 years old. In the town square of the Spanish city that my mother is from, there is an ice cream cafe that has been there for decades that is housed on the corner of a 4-story apartment building that was over 100 years old. I have vivid memories of being in the square, especially in the evening, of looking up at the balconies of the apartments over the ice cream shop and seeing people looking down at the square. The people looked normal in every way except for one thing. They were completely paper white, skin, hair, clothes, everything. They didn't seem menacing or evil or even sad. They were just there, looking out over the square at the people below. My family moved away from Spain, but we would go back often, almost every summer. I remember at around 9 or 10 being at the square and asking my family, where did the people who used to watch from the balconies go? I hadn't seen them on the previous trips, and not on this one either. My mother and aunts and uncles looked at me like I was crazy. It was impossible for me to have seen people on the balconies, as the apartments above the ice cream cafe were condemned and no one had lived in them for decades, they told me. I was in shock. The images were still in my head. I know I'd seen them there as a younger child. They say that young children who haven't lost their innocence can see things older people can't. I wonder if that has anything to do with it. The next 3 events happened in the Philippines when I was 11 to 12 years old. My younger brother, 8 to 9 at the time, and I were staying at an aunt's home in the Pampanga region. We were boisterous boys, always being noisy, playing pranks, the typical thing boys do. My aunt and older cousins would tell us not to be loud, as this could draw the ire of the spirits and magical beings. Some people in the Philippines are very spiritual and superstitious. Of course, we didn't believe them. It seemed like nonsense. My brother and I were sleeping in the detached guest house from the main house. One night, when all of a sudden the windows started rattling and we heard a loud sushing noise outside. Then a floating candle appeared at one of the windows and started moving across, and it then appeared at all of the next windows. My brother and I started screaming and ducked under the covers of one bed together. We eventually fell asleep from the exhaustion of being scared. After that night, we decided not to sleep in the guest house alone anymore, so we were given a spare bedroom in the main house. A few nights after the candle incident, we were awakened to the sound of the family dogs barking wildly. We looked out the window and saw some sort of shadow bead with glowing red eyes near where the doghouse was. All of a sudden, the dogs started to whimper and finally all barking went silent. We tore away from the window and again ducked under the covers. The next morning, it was discovered that one of the dogs had puppies. but they were all dead. Then finally on the day that my brother and I were leaving my aunt's home, we were in the back seat of the car. No one was in the front of the car. It was early afternoon and broad daylight. All of a sudden, the horn on the car started going off wildly. The windshield wipers came on. The car's light flicked on and off. This lasted roughly about a minute. It wasn't as scary because it was during the day, but we wondered what was going on. My family joked that the spirits were happy, the loud little boys were leaving, and there would soon be peace and quiet. Those are my direct experiences so far. It's been years since I've had anything else happen, but I'm always waiting for it to happen. I think I might be a tree whisperer. I've had 2 instances where trees have warned me that something bad is going to happen. The first time, it happened around 5 years ago. I was living at home at the time. When getting home, I would park at the side of my house, in the same place, every day. My parents always took the driveway parking. My parking spot had a tree growing on the sidewalk or curb area right beside it. I never really acknowledged the tree. It was just there. Then one night, I arrived home pretty late and parked in my usual spot. But the tree didn't feel right. I tried convincing myself that that was silly and that I just need to get over it, but I just couldn't. After fighting with myself, I decided I'll just pull forward, blocking the cars in my driveway. Anything to get away from that tree. I left a note to my parents. Sorry for blocking the driveway. Please wake me up and I'll move my car, no problem. Just felt weird about the tree. It was weird to even explain, but I wanted them to know I did this intentionally and that I had no problem moving my car out of the way. The next morning, it was early and my mom comes in. I am immediately in panic mode. I'm so sorry, I'm moving my car right now. But she stopped me and said, "No, the tree fell." I couldn't believe it, and sure enough, the tree would have completely crushed my car. I saved it that day. The second time it happened was 1.5 years ago. I was sitting in my backyard enjoying the weather. Then this giant oak tree in my yard made a screeching sound. It was weird. I have never heard a tree make such a sound. I thought back to my first tree incident with the car. But I checked out the tree. It was sturdy, looked healthy, didn't see any problems with it. I tried to move on. I didn't really believe that trees talked to me. The first time was just a weird coincidence, but I couldn't let the thought of that tree go. Every night I was losing sleep, tossing and turning, only thinking about that tree. After about a week of this, I was feeling dread. It was like I have to do something about this. I could no longer ignore it. I called a tree expert. Sorry, forgot the actual name of the profession. And he told me that I was lucky that I called about it because it has a high chance of falling on one of the houses, especially the next time there's a windstorm in the area. We decided to cut it down. It was removed the next day. Not even a week later, there was a big windstorm. I honestly believe the dread was warning me for that day. I think it would have fell on my house and probably more specifically, my room. My skeptical brain is saying I wouldn't know if the expert was being truthful about the tree cause it looked fine. But I'm thankful I didn't keep the tree around to find out.